Let's get into part two of the Trump press conference. The first question from the reporters is about Trump talking about Panama and Greenland.
President, thank you. Wanted to touch on the world on fire that you mentioned, but let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by...
He can't confirm or deny whether he will use military force to take Panama or Greenland. That is batshit insane. He's been asked about Ukraine and if he's willing to commit to protecting Ukraine if they find a peace deal.
To hold on to leverage in dealing with President Putin, would you make a commitment to the Ukrainians that you will keep supporting them during the negotiations?
Well, I wouldn't tell you if that were the case.
Would you make a commitment to provide a security guarantee if they do enter into an armistice or a ceasefire along the lines that the French and the Germans?
So, a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war.
His answer to whether he will commit to protecting Ukraine, our ally, is to ramble about how Putin didn't want them to join NATO and how that's actually the reason the war is happening. That Ukraine should have just went along with what Putin wanted instead of being concerned for their own sovereignty and their own safety. And that is the biggest right-wing talking point. That Biden is the reason that this war happened because Ukraine wanted to join NATO. He also goes on to spew a bunch of nonsense about how he knows NATO better than anybody, even though he says in the press conference, when I first started, I knew nothing about NATO, and now I know everything. And he goes on to tell the same story that he's been telling for years at his rallies about how he was talking to world leaders, and one of them asked, so if we don't pay our bills and Russia attacks us, you won't help us? And Trump responds by basically saying, you're on your own. He also goes on to be asked about January 6th and pardoning the insurrectionists, and makes the weirdest claim.
You said on your first day of office you're going to pardon January 6th defendants. Are you planning to pardon those who were charged with violent offenses?
Well, we're looking at it, and we have other people in there. And as you see, I guess 24 or 28 people came now from the FBI. That came out very quietly. Nobody reported it, but they had people in some form related to the FBI. They had 4 or 5 people that were strongly related to the FBI. We have to find out about that. We have to find out about Hezbollah. We have to find out about who exactly was in that whole thing, because people that did some bad things were not prosecuted. I see it all the time, and you see it too. People that were doing some bad things weren't prosecuted, and people that didn't even walk into the building are in jail right now.
He's claiming that Hezbollah was there on January 6th. That's crazy. And if you saw my video yesterday, I talked about January 6th and I showed clips. And they're just Trump supporters, man. There's nothing deep about it. They're just American, pissed off, racist Trump supporters. It's not Hezbollah. Then Trump is asked about Gaza and the hostages. And I want everyone to pay attention here, because I heard a lot about how both sides are bad. But this is what Trump wants to do.
Loud and clear. Better get done by the inaugural.
But when you say all hell will be
Before I
paid,
take office.
that all hell must be paid if they don't release the hostages.
You know what that means, don't you?
Well,
do I have to define it for you? Look, all
No, I know
hell
you're not
will
gonna
break out.
telegraph
If
what-
those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East.
Can you elaborate?
And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Mainstream media journalists are always like, oh, but what did Trump really mean when he said that? And even Trump himself there is like, do I need to define it for you? All hell is going to break loose if they don't return the hostages, and it's not going to be good for Hamas. Trump and MAGA aren't just pro-Israel because they're pro-Israel. They're pro-Israel because they're anti-Palestine and because he wants to build hotels in Gaza. There's not going to be any humanitarian aid or support going to Gaza because there is now, and yeah, it's not enough, but it's something. In about 2 weeks, that shit is all done. Anyway, the topic of January 6th gets brought up again.
Injured by rioters on January 6th. Will you pardon anyone who attacked a police officer?
Well, you know, the only one that was killed was a beautiful young lady named Ashley Babbitt. She was killed, and there was actually somebody else that was killed, also a MAGA person, but people don't give it 100% credibility. I'm going to find out about it, and we're going to find out. But Ashley Babbitt was killed. She was shot. She should have never been shot. She was shot for no reason whatsoever. In fact, they say that she was trying to hold back the crowd, and the crowd was made up of a lot of different people.
He is spreading conspiracy theories about his own supporters and lying explicitly about what happened to Ashley Babbitt. It's on video from multiple angles. I'm not going to share it here because it's extremely graphic, but Ashley Babbitt was not holding back the crowd. Some guys in front of her had broken a window, and there was a Capitol Police officer on the other side of the window holding a gun towards the crowd, and she starts crawling through the broken window while people are screaming, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. She wasn't holding back anything. She was ready to go to war. He is delusional, and it's on video, but his followers believe him. He also goes on to talk about how they didn't have any guns. If it was a real insurrection, they would have had guns.
When they talk, you know, there was never charges of insurrection or anything like that. But if there were, this would be the only insurrection in history where people went in as insurrectionists with not one gun. Okay? And let me tell you, the people that you're talking about have a lot of guns in their home for hunting and for shooting and for entertainment, a lot of good reasons. But there wasn't one gun that they found.
They did find guns. People were armed. He was saying that people who didn't even go in the building were arrested. One of those people was Stuart Rhodes. Stuart Rhodes was the leader of the Oath Keeper, who was sentenced to, I think it was 17 years. He was waiting outside with other Oath Keepers with a massive weapon cache on January 6th. A member of the Oath Keepers who traveled to Washington before the January 6th in the U.S. Capitol testified Wednesday about a massive cache of weapons the far-right extremist group stashed in a Virginia hotel room. They were prepared to bring in massive amounts of weapons, AR-15s, to bring to people as soon as they had secured the Capitol. That was the plan. He gets asked again about Greenland and if he's going to go to war with them, and he says, we need Greenland for our security and to protect the free world, although he was saying earlier that he doesn't want to protect anybody unless they pay him. He also talks about Canada and if we're going to go to war with them, and he says, no, it's going to be economic warfare. He whines about Canadian subsidies, which is literally just the trade deficit. And he calls Prime Minister Trudeau, Governor Trudeau. He's very excited about what Facebook just announced today, or Meta. Mark Zuckerberg announced that it's going to basically be more like X and that they're going to work with President Trump. So he's really pumped about that. And he gets asked about the economic bill that he wants to pass, which is one giant bill versus some in Congress who want to split it into two bills. He doesn't care either way. But the MAGA Congress, for the past 4 years, has been screaming about how every single bill should be a single item bill and be no more than like 5 pages because they're all illiterate. There's a lot more clips I could show you, but that's basically the gist of it. He wants to go to war with Canada and Greenland and Panama for national security. And he wants to end the offshore drilling ban. And he wants to pardon all January 6ers because he thinks Hezbollah did it. Man's not even president yet, and he's already causing turmoil around the world. Again, I say good job to everyone who voted for this man, everyone who didn't vote, and everyone who voted third party. Thank you so much.